Hi everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of March and the lunar eclipse that we have coming up in Libra on the 25th. Now, not only that, but remember that we are in a very powerful, energetic, and astrological force, really, for the second half of March that is building into April. April is one of the peak months of the year because of the total solar eclipse and also because of the very important Jupiter-Uranus conjunction on the 20th. And so I have a separate video already on the Aries equinox. I'll put the link for that below. So that's actually a very important part of this second half of March. So it's important that you see that to get the full picture. But I won't cover that same ground. Just to remind you that at equinoxes and solstices, they are more likely times for us to experience geomagnetic storms. And as we know, the general geomagnetics around the Earth are much less stable than they have been because we're in the peak of solar cycle 25 and all the things I've been talking about over the last year or so. So very powerful energy, but let me get down to the detail of this second half of March. I think the first thing to note is on the 17th of the month, we have the Sun coming together in its annual conjunction with Neptune. And this can make us feel very idealistic, actually. You know, really wanting to dream in a more perfect world than this. A more beautiful, gentle, kind, compassionate world than we are living in. And many of us feel that, and many of us are taking action in various ways to do that. And so it's also an extremely creative aspect as well. If you're involved in any kind of creativity, writing, poetry, art, music, that is a beautiful day for your imagination and your creative blossoming. And then we'll have obviously the Aries equinox, which happens on certainly in the UK, happens on the 20th. And then the next thing I really want to focus on is this lunar eclipse on the 25th of March. So let me share my screen now with that chart for you. Okay, now this is set for 7 a.m. UK time on the 25th. That actually happens. The hours change slightly, different times in the US and the UK, but so it's zero hours Pacific time, 7 a.m. UK time, and our hour changes at the end of March, but that will be covered, as I say, in the next video. So this is what is called a penumbral eclipse. And that means that the moon is just passing through the Earth's outer shadow. So yes, it's an eclipse, but it isn't as powerful as the next one we have, the total solar eclipse on the 8th of April. That is the most powerful one of the year, and I'll be talking about that in the next video. But with any eclipse, you have to have the moon close to the north node or the south node. Now we can see that the sun here is at 5 of Aries, and the north node is at 16 of Aries. And remember, always, 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 because it's an axis, the south node is opposite the north node. So the south node is at 16 of Libra, which is why this is simply penumbral partial, because the moon isn't super tight to the south node. However, any lunar eclipse represents an ending or a closure or a culmination or a completion of some kind. So see where 5 degrees of Libra falls in your own chart, which house area. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website, go to the link below and get the 2-part video series, which is, these are teaching videos. So that can help you navigate your own birth chart and help you to understand what every one of my updates means for you. But so not only is the lunar eclipse, because it's the peak of a moon cycle, it's a full, it's like a big full moon, it always represents an ending or a completion of some kind that is emphasized, doubly emphasized, because the moon is also conjunct the south node. And the south node is what we're leaving behind us. We've already explored the south node behaviorally, and we are moving away from those habit patterns, how we've behaved in the past. So that reinforces this idea of endings. And so one of the big themes around Libra, as many of you will know, is relationships. And that can be relationships of all kinds. It can be big global alliances, even, big contracts or agreements between big parties out in the world who influence the world. Or it could literally be your own personal romantic relationship. And remember that we don't always walk all of our journey with the same person. We walk our journey for a period of time with someone else, and then we bless them and thank them and love them, and then we move on, because we're all evolving at different rates, particularly at the moment. Some people are on the fast track at the airport and other people are on the slower track. And again, that's absolutely no judgment, depends on our soul contract and the choices we've made. But so try and be a kind of kindly and dispassionate when relationships come to an end, and bless and thank that person. But certainly I'm seeing already many people I know going through relationship endings in various ways. And certainly this can change the dynamics in a relationship. And so it's also, and this is partly because what's very clearly emphasized here with the moon being conjunct the south node, be it widely, is that Libra is to do with people pleasing, compliance, don't rock the boat, go along with the crowd. And we may be awakening because of all of the huge things that are happening, particularly well with the Aries and Taurus energy here, massive emphasis over here in Pisces, Aries, Taurus. Those will be hitting three big houses in your chart, three major houses in your chart, that we are waking up to our sovereignty, to our inner authority in a bigger way. And if we recognize in any way we've been overly compliant in any kind of relationship, whether that's in society or whether it's with your partner, we are starting to feel perhaps that isn't necessarily any more for our highest good, and we are starting to move on. And that is particularly emphasized because we have Mercury conjunct Eris here. Eris, you'll remember, is the warrior sister of Mars. She is the one that created mayhem at the wedding of the gods at Mount Olympus when she was the only one who wasn't invited. So she turned up anyway and created merry hell by throwing the golden apple into the center of the goddesses and said, "For the fairest," and they all fought and scrapped, and that was said to lead to the Trojan War. So she's a warrior energy, she's assertive, she's very much standing in her sovereignty, she stands for truth, standing in our own truth. She fights inequality, she fights elitism, she fights for everyone being included, nobody excluded, nobody on the periphery, everybody having a voice. So there's some very clear themes already at this lunar eclipse. And also now we have an operational conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus. And again, this is an expansion, Jupiter, of our individuality, our authenticity, our sense of unique essence, and also expanding our need for freedom and demands for equality. In that way, Uranus's symbolism is very close to Eris in that way. Equality, everybody needing to be heard. So, yes, and as I say, super clear themes here. We also have continuing, and we had this at the last lunation, the Pisces new supermoon, we have Venus conjunct Saturn here. And this can be, again, because it includes Venus, a reassessment around relationships. It can be in a very pragmatic, realistic, objective way. Are they truly an honest expression of who you are now, or have you already outgrown them? And so it's that kind of a process. It can also be where we feel more emotionally reserved because we're thinking through the dynamics in that relationship. However, as I think I mentioned last time, Venus-Saturn aspects can actually consolidate a strong relationship. You're looking at it pragmatically, realistically, objectively, as well as hopefully at a different level romantically, and saying, yep, it works on all levels. This is a strong relationship and it's worth strengthening further and going, I'm going to go forwards with this. But there is a lot of rethinking around relationship here for sure. It can also reflect some kind of financial restructuring or reassessment, because Venus also represents money and wealth. But certainly there's a kind of emotional introspection here with that aspect for sure. And of course, this is coming, this lunar eclipse in Libra, just after the equinox, just 5 days after the equinox. So it's still kind of under the influence of that too. Now, still really about relationships, we have Venus in very close sextile to Jupiter. And this is where we want to expand perhaps beyond what we've currently had or currently got in relationship. And on the 28th of March, Venus comes into sextile with Uranus. And then we really start to feel, I want more freedom, I want more variety, I want more independence. I don't want to be so controlled or locked in any way. And that's when you may get a little more uppity in any relationship change as well. So, but yes, certainly with these planets in Aries, this real stellium in Aries, there is a very strong need for assertion of individuality, sovereignty, inner authority. I know who I am. Aries energy, as I've said before, has a very strong sense of I know who I am. It's very simple. It's present. I know who I am and what I'm here to do. So, and we have a very tight conjunction here between Mercury and Eris. And so we are going to be speaking about any lack of truth, any lack of justice, any lack of social inclusion, those kinds of things, lack of equality in society. We're going to be speaking assertively and clearly, Mercury in Aries, about those things. And we still have here Chiron conjunct the North Node. And I spoke about this at some length with Nancy Rebecca in the conversation that we had on the 8th of the month, and that at the Aries solar eclipse, which we have on the 8th of April, Chiron is within a minute of exactitude of the sun and moon, the eclipse itself. And this is about a mass healing for people. Chiron is known as the wounded healer. It's where we have felt wounded or traumatized in our past. It's often linked to victim consciousness in Aries. Here it's linked to the North Node. And this is really saying the collective soul's path of growth going forwards is to heal that trauma on a mass scale. And I think the total solar eclipse will be a very powerful time when we do that. A big shift in energy around that total solar eclipse and ongoing through the month of April. So healing that victim consciousness. So, but but nonetheless, we have a rise in rebellious energy here. Mercury Eris conjunction, Jupiter Uranus conjunction, Jupiter expanding, the rebellion, the revolution of Uranus. Again, check out the video. I've done a whole video on that, as I say. So it's the demands for freedom which will be running very strongly, demands for more grassroots action, decentralization versus centralization. And that's actually being reinforced by Pluto now being in Aquarius as opposed to Capricorn. Capricorn is top-down structure, power over. Aquarius is more horizontally structured society, really beginning the shift of power back to the people, grassroots communities, etc. So we also have here Mars is conjunct the one of the four royal fixed stars of Persia called Fomalhaut. Fomalhaut is at 3 degrees of Pisces, and Fomalhaut is really known as the spiritual teacher. So there's a big spiritual context to this lunar eclipse in Libra too. And Fomalhaut is also linked to Archangel Gabriel, which is really beautiful. So there's some very angelic energy coming in here. The Sun at 5 degrees of Aries is conjunct Salassia at 9 degrees of Aries. And remember, Salassia was the wife of Mermaid in myth. She is she's mermaid energy. She's linked to the shimmering sunlight and moonlight on the seas. I believe she's very linked to photonic light that is helping to upgrade us as we move through the photon belt. So not only is the Sun conjunct Salassia here, but by the 29th of the month, it will be exactly conjunct Salassia at 9 degrees of Aries. So this whole, eclipses are pivot points. They're wild cards very often. Often the consequences come out of the blue. We weren't expecting them, particularly resulting in endings if it's a lunar eclipse. And the changes are usually permanent that we have in our lives, usually permanent. So that's why we could see relationships and contracts and alliances kind of shifting out of our lives and shifting off the global stage too. There's going to be a whole kind of reassessment there too. And this to me is kind of suggesting that as we move forwards on this pivot point of the lunar eclipse, that we are increasingly moving into our light body. We are increasingly moving into our light body with the Sun conjunct Salassia, which is exact on the 29th. We also have here Gong Gong or Gong Kun at 5 degrees of Pisces. So Mars is conjunct Gong Kun, and it becomes exactly conjunct Gong Kun on the 29th of March as well, same day as the Sun is conjunct Salassia. Both of them, of course, are very connected to water, Salassia being the wife of Neptune and also mermaid energy. Gong Kun, not only in Pisces, but he has a very long orbit of 551 years. He is the Chinese god of flooding, connected to flooding. In the myth, you might remember when he was so angry that he didn't gain the throne, he bashed his head against the Buzu Mountains, and he was said to tilt the sky, the sun and moon and stars, the whole sky to the northeast and the land to the southwest. So, big stuff that Gong Gong in his mythology was connected with. So, yes, he's linked to flooding, but he is also linked to channeling floods and channeling psychic information, which we know as we move through these times, we're going to all become increasingly psychically sensitive as well. And I think he's also related to the big insight that drops in our sudden shift of perception, Now, Jupiter-Uranus is the shift of perception, the shattering of belief systems that I think we will most certainly see starting in April. So Gong Gong is saying, in a way, the same thing. It's this heightened perception that suddenly makes you reassess everything. So you've changed your perspective, you've changed your point of view, and suddenly you get these insights that flood in to your psyche and think, wow, that changes everything. I just didn't see it that way. So I think that's very much part of the picture too. Now, very positively, we have the moon in a trine to Pluto. Last time it was we've had the moon opposing Pluto, which is much more difficult. Whenever you get any aspect really between the moon and Pluto, there is a degree of intensity of emotion, intensity of feeling. And so we still have that here, but it's easier to handle. And yes, it's about, because if we look at Pluto in Aquarius, it's about issues of freedom, issues of civil rights, human rights, equality, that kind of thing. And Libra indeed is also about, in a way, fairness, equality, getting the balance right, not having extreme inequality and extreme elitism. It has to be fairer than it has been. But also, as I mentioned with Nancy Rebecca, I mentioned certainly in the last update, we actually, this glyph is for Sedna, in fact, and we have this long-term trine, out of sign trine at the moment, between Sedna and Pluto. If Sedna had just tipped into Gemini, you could see the trine more easily. And Pluto is also in a long-term square, for both aspects, all of this year, all of next, to Haumea here at 1 degree of Scorpio. And so this is really about a complete transformation in the socio-economic and political structure of society, which is only just beginning now. It's a 20-year transit of Pluto, but it is ultimately about the complete metamorphosis for humanity. And metamorphosis is a word that Nancy Rebecca has channeled for humanity, and it's absolutely the symbolism for Sedna. Absolutely the symbolism for Sedna. So, yes, very, very interesting. Now, the other thing, I'll stop sharing here, as I say, just the other two things of note. I think what is very interesting at this Libra lunar eclipse is that the moon is conjunct the midheaven of the US chart. And that's taking the chart for the 4th of July, 1776, Philadelphia, 5:10 in the afternoon, for the signing of the Declaration of Independence. That's the chart I've used for many, many years, and I believe most astrologers use. So the midheaven there is at 1 degree of Libra. Now, the midheaven in a country's chart is to do with the government or the leadership of the country. So this is very interesting, that this lunar eclipse, a cycle of closure, completion, endings, is linked to that midheaven. So we will see what unfolds in the US. And remember that all of this for the US is now in the context not only of its Pluto return, but also the fact that the total solar eclipse on the 8th of April falls right across the US again, northeast to southwest. So big deal. America is in the crosswires in many, many ways. But this lunar eclipse is also conjunct the ascendant for the chart of the UK that is most often used. And this chart is for the 1st of January, 1801, 0 hours London. So, and the ascendant there is for 7 degrees of Libra. Now, the ascendant, whether it's in a country or a person, is really the identity of that person or that country, how it's projected out into the world. And I think historically, Britain has been seen as a country that is fair and right and balanced in its approach. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens at this Libra lunar eclipse. Another very big theme for Libra is legalities. There are two signs that are linked to legalities. One is Sagittarius, the arrow of truth, and the other is Libra, the scales of justice. So both for the US, as it's hitting the midheaven, and for the UK, it's hitting the ascendant, the identity of Britain, of the UK. How will that change? Will there be any legalities unfolding? And how will that change the identity of the country in terms of how it's perceived in the wider world? I think that will be very interesting indeed. And remember, we are going into a super, super powerful period of astrology and energy in the coming weeks. So just keep on coming back to your mantra. Are welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. We are welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love, and know that this is already happening. We are already welcoming it in. It's present tense. It's not future tense, it's present tense. And I was really thrilled on the 8th when I spoke to Nancy Rebecca, because she very kindly says, as a gifted psychic and medium, that she oversees the meditations, the group meditations that we have on a Sunday evening, 7 o'clock UK time, for 15 minutes, all for free. And she said that week by week, the light that we are generating is building. She said the light was so bright last Sunday. And so, we are doing that for free by expanding our hearts, expanding our love, and welcoming in that expanded consciousness of love. Anyone can do it. Everyone can do it. And I'll put a link again for a very short video where I explain what this is about, all for free. Anyone can join. And we are changing the world. We are changing the world in doing that. So don't forget, also watch the Aries equinox. For those of you who've asked, I don't have an update on David Farrell yet, but clearly there's a lot going on in Mexico with him, and I can't expect replies, but if I get an update, I will, of course, let you know. God bless, and have a wonderful lunar eclipse in Libra on the 25th. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.